GwEN'S. I am your host, GwEN'S Mashile. So in this segment of the personal finance segment of GwEN'S, I decided to also record a YouTube video because I haven't really uploaded content on my YouTube channel. So I'll be reviewing 4 personal finance books by South African authors. I personally like South African authors because it really gives me a nice view of what I can implement as a South African. So I basically love those. I'm going to start with What's Your Move? Oh guys, I'm not good with YouTube. I don't know how YouTubers do it. What's Your Move? By Nicolette Mashile. Beautiful cover. A bit thick, right? Then we're gonna move on to You Are Not Broke, but You Are Pure-rich. Or it's basically You're Not Broke, You Are Pure-rich by Mapalo Makhu. Also, but it's a bit smaller than Nicolette's book. Next up, we've got How to Make Your First Million by Warren Ingram. And some of you might be asking, why am I starting with How to Make Your First Million? Well, because I read these books in this order. And lastly, Become Your Financial Advisor, also by Warren Ingram. So I'm going to start with What's Your Move by Nicolette Mashile. I've already spoken a bit about the cover. So, very beautiful cover. I love it. I love pink. If you know me, pink is my favorite color. Even though you would hardly find me wearing pink, but I have a lot of pink items. Squeeze bottle, nice pencil cases, and all of those things. I love it. It's very beautiful. It's got a bit of pinkish. And she's got a queen sitting on the throne, like the queen that she is with Nicolette. So it looks very beautiful. I love it. And yeah, the texture is just beautiful, right? And then the book cover for You Are Not Broke, You're Pure-rich by Mapalo. I don't really like the color blocking. I honestly don't like the color blocking. But she also has a female on her cover because we know Gutu Mapalo, she's a womandla. She's everything for women. But yeah, no, the color blocking doesn't do it for me. Next up, How to Make Your First Million. Well, if you know, purple is a color for royalty. And if you notice here, right, what Warren has done is that the word million is basically bold in a different font, I think, because it has to stand out for the buyer. So if you're going to buy the book, you're going to first see million and be like, ooh, okay, how to make your first million, and you can purchase the book. I love the fact that he chose the color purple. Like I said, royalty purple is all about money, similar to green, but it's more of a wealth royalty color. And then lastly, I don't know, what's this color? Turquoise. Yeah, turquoise. So he used, you can see it's sort of like a hand, an umbrella, and money. What this says for me, it basically speaks about saving, insurance. It doesn't really speak financial advisor, but well, what do I know? Mercedes is not a financial advisor. Well, let's get to okay, now that we've spoken about the covers, the boring part of the review, let's get to what I loved about each book. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Basically what I liked, what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy. So, firstly with What's Your Move by Nicolette Mashile, I really love the fact that it's based on the collection of her financial journey, her stories about what she's experienced, right? And the chapters that really stood out for me, basically comparing all the books, right? She's got a lot of amazing chapters. I loved it. the chapters that stood out for me is chapter 10, where she speaks about what's your why when it comes to real estate, and chapter 11, where she's basically talking about why she hates her house. Right? I could relate to chapter 10, and basically the information that she shared in chapter 10, it's not information that you would really get in any normal Google search or actually on YouTube. So what she's basically covered is the process that she went to when she was buying her house, and she explains the offer to purchase process very nicely, because she also speaks about the penalty that she actually had to pay. Well, I went through something similar, but at least for me, I didn't really have to pay a penalty because, hey, I rejected an offer, but luckily it was within the time frame. I think I recorded it in one of my podcast episodes where I spoke about the biggest mistake of my life. So Nicolette shares this journey, and I honestly think this is valuable information that you wouldn't really get unless you really read the book or you know someone who has really went through the process. So I'm not going to share much about it. So if you want to know more what I'm talking about, Tenga Incwadi, darling. And why I loved the part where she spoke about why she hates her house or hates her property. Honestly, sometimes we make bad investments or bad decisions, and we find it very difficult to actually come to terms with accepting that. And I'm also in that situation, you know, like where I'm actually thinking, oh my word, I really don't like this apartment. There's like a lot of things that I like. The fact that it's closer to work, the fact that I don't have to drive every day, but there's just small things. I also love the fact that we've got the best fiber that you can ever get in terms of internet connection. It's very reasonable, and it's something that I really like, right? And the other thing that I loved about the book, like she touches on a lot of investing, how to invest, different tips that you get in a normal YouTube channel for that is basically hosted by someone who's a personal finance influencer. But what really stood out for me is what she shared about her process in buying property that you can't really get in a lot of them, right? So that is the parts that I really loved about What's Your Move by Nicolette Mashile. And what I loved is that she's also asking, after every chapter, she's asking, what's your move? Basically, what she's trying to say is, after you've read a chapter in this book about debt, after you've read a chapter in this book about budgeting, after you've read a chapter in this book about black checks, what is your move? Basically, how are you going to implement what you've read, what you've learned in your personal finance journey, right? Then next up, let's go to what I loved about Mapalo's book. You are not broke, you are pre-rich. Get it? So what I loved and what also stood out for me is a topic that you hardly get on YouTube. If you basically search for a lot of YouTube videos on this, and you hardly get it in personal finance books. So Mapalo touched on the process of buying a car in chapter 11. Oh, I mean, like, especially for young professionals, especially for someone who started working and who's new at this finance thing. Obviously, when you start making money and earning a salary, the first thing that you want to buy is a car. And she also talks about how a car is a symbol of I've arrived, you know, people will buy the first salary that they get or the first car that they get. Instead of buying an entry-level car, umuntu will go and buy a Beamer or a Merc. Maybe Funukbono, I don't know. And that's also the other problem, that especially in black communities, in the townships, the fact that you've bought a car, it shows that you are successful. The fact that you've bought a BMW, you've bought a Merc, you've bought, you know, like some of these German cars, you've bought an Audi. It kind of like is seen as a symbol of, this one unemali. I remember when I bought my first car. It was a very nice, small, portable Honda Brio. And the reason I went for that car, it's because I was very new to driving. Because initially my goal was to buy a Mini as my first car. And then I quickly realized that I'm very new at this driving thing. And I might be bumping walls and everything. So I thought, okay, fine. Let me just start with a just reasonable small car that I can maneuver. And I remember someone saying to me, they were having a conversation with their cousin or someone, and they made a comment, why did CD buy such a small, ugly car? And I laughed, and I said to them, well, that person made that comment. Number one, they don't even have a car. I don't even know that they've got a driver's license. At least I've got a car that takes me from point A to point B. So what people think of my car at that time, I didn't really care. And because, you know, like when you make goals, I made a goal and I said, definitely I will buy the car that I love, my dream car. And at that time when that person made that comment, they didn't know my plans were me. They didn't know that the plan was actually to drive this car up until I'm comfortable with driving and I know how to maneuver on the freeway and I'm comfortable with parking and everything. Once I'm comfortable, after 2 years, the plan, I've written it in my visualization book, the plan was for me to drive a Mini by the time I turn 30. And I wonder what they're saying now. Well, I don't know and I don't care. Going back to chapter 11 of Mapalo's book, another part that I loved is that she is discussing in detail also the process of a balloon payment. What is a balloon payment? We all know that sometimes people take a balloon payment because it makes the repayment of their car a bit reasonable or a bit bearable, but they are forgetting that with a balloon payment, you will need to have that whole chunk that you are not paying throughout the financing of the car towards the end. If the balance was 20,000, cash manje, so you must have that. And the other thing that I really liked that stood out was the Q&A session with Wendy Nola. Wendy basically answered all of Mapalo's question. And another thing that I really loved about Mapalo's book is that in some of the chapters, actually most of the chapters, she's got a Q&A where she is asking someone about their experience or what they would basically advise a young person, a new person on the topic that is being discussed, like in terms of shares, in terms of property, like I'm saying now in terms of buying a car. So that is the chapter that I liked, and yeah, this book is amazing. Next up, How to Make Your First Million by Warren Ingram. Okay, so what I loved about the book, obviously, you read the title of the book, How to Make Your First Million by Warren Ingram. And you really want to know. Everybody who is not a rand millionaire or a dollar millionaire wants to know how to make your first million. What I loved about the book is the different case studies that he provides in the other chapters where he's got different people, old, young, business people, like people that are working, people that are in the private sector, that are sharing their experiences on how they've made their first million. But the practical example that one can apply, Warren has shared on page 37 of the book. If you want to know what does page 37 of the book say, you need to buy the book so that you can really read, right? And understand the tips that he's sharing. So in the case studies, he's got people that are sharing how to make your first million or how they've made their first million. What really stands out for me, and the lesson that I'm taking from this book, is that there's different ways to make your first million, but the other thing that we need to understand as human beings is that making your first million will take a lot of time, will take a long time. So it's not like you're gonna wake up tomorrow, boom, when you're a millionaire, unless if you win a lottery or you inherit the millions. But under normal circumstances, making R1 million takes, I think, maximum maybe 5 years for some people. Even with a business, for you to really make your business run properly and make a profit of R1 million, it really takes quite some time. It takes discipline, it takes hard work, it takes you not sleeping, it takes you making sacrifices, not spending time with your kids, not spending time with friends, not spending time with family. So that's what I liked about the book. I really liked the case studies and what he's sharing on how we can make our first millions, basically using different case studies and examples of people that he's interacted with as a financial planner. Lastly, how to become your financial advisor. So obviously we know that Warren is a award-winning financial planner, right? And in the book, it basically gives you some very good nuggets on how to become your financial advisor, how to take charge, you know. And he's basically also sharing on how you can plan your retirement planning. And if you listen to Honest Money podcast and you also listen to the input that he gives on Bruce Whitfield's show every Thursday, the Money Show, you basically get a feel of what a Warren would normally suggest in this book, How to Become a Financial Advisor. Basically, you must have an emergency fund. You need to make sure that you are investing in the stock market. And if you haven't picked it up by now, Warren is a fan of the stock market, is a fan of index funds and ETFs. So he covers that a lot in this book, How to Become a Financial Advisor. And he also covers it in How to Make Your First Million. Another thing that you will pick up in the book is that he's not really a fan of property investing or investing in physical property. And honestly, when I read his views and how he's explaining why it doesn't really make sense looking at the performance of property compared to the stock market, compared to bonds, and compared to cash, and looking at how property has performed throughout the years, comparing to inflation, then it kind of makes sense. And the fact that when you're buying property, you must think about the maintenance, you must think about the levies, the rates and taxes. Similar to when you're buying a car, your only cost won't be the vehicle asset finance loan or the repayment of the loan that you need to pay. You need to consider petrol, you need to consider insurance, you need to consider a tracker as part of the final sum of the money that you're going to pay. So basically that's what I liked about the books. I would really recommend that you buy them, but towards the end of this segment I'm going to rate the books. So now let's get to what I didn't like about the books, because obviously you will like something and there are certain parts that you go like, oh my word, really? So yeah, let's get to that. Okay, cool. Now that we've spoken about what I loved about the books, let's get to what I didn't like about the books. I'm basically going to share what the authors of the books might not like to hear, but I mean, like, I've bought the books, I've read them. Obviously, there are things that I didn't like. So starting with What's Your Move? I noticed a few spelling mistakes here and there, and I'm one of those people that if I see a spelling mistake, it turns me off. But yeah, another thing that I kind of, not that I didn't like, but it really didn't do anything for me. the chapters on black text and the price of love, maybe because I didn't really, they didn't really resonate with me, because I don't know whether I've actually experienced black text. Maybe I'm one of the lucky people. Well, I think I have, but not to that extent. And about the price of love, I've got my views on umjolo nemali, so I'm not gonna be giving someone 250,000 like Nicolette did. And easy, my darling. So yeah, basically the topic of black text in young Bora, I don't really understand it. Maybe it's also because I don't see it as black text, because the only person that I really spent my money on outside of myself is my dad. So really, black text is just an old topic. We must really stop talking about it and stop writing about it, because people should really take responsibility for their parents, their siblings. I'm not really a fan of taking care of cousins and their kids. No. Right? Then when we get to Mapalo's book, You Are Not Broke, You Are Pre-Rich. Hey, Mapalo loves budget. Yo. You can tell that she's writing about budgeting with a passion. And me being an accounting graduate with an accounting degree, I felt like, I'm reading an accounting 101 textbook. So that was just pretty boring for me. Maybe for someone who really wants to know about budgeting, it will make sense for them. For me, it was like, okay, fine, we don't really need to read about budgeting in a book. It's simple. Write down your income. What are your fixed expenses? Less that, you must make sure that you first account for your fixed expenses. And that's it, Nothing fancy, man. Then we're going to go to How to Make Your First Million. And actually, I'm going to combine what I didn't like about the two books. I read a review on Take a Lot. And the reason I read the review, I didn't read the review before suggesting the books as part of my birthday list, but I read the reviews after reading the last book. Because remember I said I started with How to Make Your First Million, and then I moved on to How to Become a Financial Advisor. And the reason I read the review when I was reading How to Become a Financial Advisor, it's because I got a bit irritated at some point, because it felt like what I'm reading in this book, I read in the previous book. So like, what's happening? So what I didn't like, let's first start with How to Make Your First Million. Honestly, the other chapters before the case study, especially for someone who's bought the first book. Okay, fine. Let's actually start with How to Become your financial advisor, your own financial advisor. The book gives real practical examples of how you can do it. But what I didn't like, there was a lot of repetition in the book. Either something that was said in a previous chapter, you read it again in another chapter. Or something that was said in a previous paragraph, you'd read it in another paragraph. Like when he was explaining endowment policies, he repeated the definition twice, and I'm like, oh my God, why do we need to repeat stuff? I didn't buy a book to read something in chapter 5 and then read it again in chapter 10. No, if there was nothing to write about, there's absolutely nothing to write about. I've read it once and that's it. Maybe there was some sort of a thinking behind this to drill the things into our thinking, but no, I honestly didn't like that. And because I read How to Make Your First Million in the as the first book that I read, I honestly felt like I actually agree with the review that I saw on Take a Lot. Basically what the review said is that if you have bought or read the first book, How to Become Your Own Financial Advisor or Become Your Own Financial Advisor, there is absolutely no need to read the second book. And I honestly agree with that. After reading both books, I basically think besides the case studies in how to make your first million, everything else you can find in the first book. So yeah, make up your minds. So yeah, that's basically my review on the books. Now let me rate the books. Starting with What's Your Move by Nicolette Mashile. Well, it's not because I love her. I love her. Right? Plus, oh, something else. I think there was a video that I uploaded where I said a message from Nicolette. So, this was my birthday present in 2020. And my sister got it for me. And at the time, Nicolette was delivering books. And as she delivered it to my sister, she gave me a video call. And she wrote me a message. It says, "My dearest Gwen, thank you for following me on this journey with you towards your financial fitness. Happy birthday. Onwards and upwards, my honey." And she signed it on my birthday. There we go. So, the book, the experience, the fact that she video called me, the message, I will give it 8 out of 10. Obviously, not 10 out of 10, because between 9 and 10, there is a room for improvement. If she's going to write her second book, take note of the spelling errors. Ziabora. And yeah, keep on doing what you're doing. The second book, Mapalo. I love Mapalo. I follow her on YouTube. She's such a cool, calm, collected boss female. You are not broke, you are pre-rich. Besides the color blocking cover. How many colors? 1, 2, 3, 4. Talk about color blocking. But yeah, that's besides the point. I will rate the book 8 out of 10. Because obviously there is room for growth. I hope in her second book she really goes in on it. We're done with the basics. And please don't repeat none of the things that you've written here, because then it's going to be boring, right? Then we're going to move on to How to Make Your First Million. I will rate this book. Actually, let me start with this one. Become Your Financial Advisor. Because obviously, this was the first book. This is the second book, right? Taking into consideration what I said I didn't like. The fact that what you find in here, you will definitely find in here. And the fact that in here, there's a lot of repetitions. I will really, based on the fact that there's a lot of practical tips, right? I will rate it 7 out of 10. And the reason I'm rating it 7 out of 10, like I said, the fact that I started with how to make your first million, and the fact that there are certain things that are just repetition. If I could find the chapter on where he was taking us through endowment policy, I would really read it, and you guys will tell Uti, if there's nothing to write about, please don't repeat. So yeah, because there were just a few repetitions, or actually a whole lot of repetitions, what you found in another chapter, you could see in another chapter. That whole table of comparing the performance between property, the stock market, bonds, and cash, you find it, I think, twice. You also find it in here. So 7 out of 10 for Become Your Financial Advisor. And How to Make Your First Million. Besides chapter 37 and the case studies, the other pages, yeah, no, right? So find your vision, how to create your own vision, finding your passion, investment fundamentals, properties and investment, investment basics, decisions. Basically chapter 1 till chapter 7 we can scrap it. Just leave the book with chapter 8, which is case studies, investment options, chapter 9, investment insights from the rich and famous, chapter 10. And because of that, I'll rate this a 5. And I really, based on that review that I saw on Take a Lot, I mean, like, make up your mind. But you can buy all books, obviously, to support South African authors, support. And also, why you should buy both these books. They actually, the money goes towards a fund that Warren and his wife have set up to pay for funding for the less fortunate, for those who cannot afford. So, get them just for that. Buy them just for that. Even if you're not going to read them, even if you think, yo, this YouTube video recording thing is a whole lot of work. I was trying it out this time. I don't think I'll try it again. I will stick to the podcast. So I'm going to upload this video on my YouTube channel, GwEN'S DM. Please subscribe. Please like. Please comment. If you've read the books and you either agree or disagree with me, comment down below. Comment down below. Comment down below. But yeah, thank you for watching. Please share. And yeah, I recommend the books. Even though obviously there's chapters that I didn't like, but based on my rating, I recommend. At least I didn't give 1 out of 10. So yeah, thank you guys. This has been GwEN'S DM, the personal finance segment book review.